Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Manjo Oison. I'm with Central Queensland University, Australia, and I'm preparing this lecture podcast on writing an essay. Essays or assessments are often used as assessment pieces in order to investigate and examine the level of awareness, the level of understanding, the knowledge of a student about a particular topic. And although there are a lot of sources available on the internet, and there are probably a lot of books written about how to write an essay, a lot of students still struggle with writing an essay, especially because they seem to be confused or are struggling with the idea of what exactly is an essay. And so in this podcast, what I intend to do is to be able to discuss what an essay is. So what exactly is an essay? I'm going to discuss that. I will also talk about the advantages of an essay as an assessment, so students have a sense of why exactly do they have to write an essay as part of an assessment. Why not just take an examination, for example? I'll also talk about the structure of an essay. I'll talk about how to write an essay, and I'll also talk about research and essay. So these are the topics I will cover in this particular podcast. So let's begin. What exactly is an essay? So an essay is a formal and extended piece of writing that presents and supports a thesis, a proposition, or central idea. So it is formal, it is not informal. In other words, if you were to write a letter to a friend, you're probably going to be using informal language. But because an essay in a university setting is often an academic piece, it has to be formal. So there are certain structures that need to be followed, a style of writing that needs to be observed. It is also extended in the sense that an essay would usually comprise, anywhere from at least 300 words to even, in the case of an assessment, for example, in LOS 12062, it's about 2,000 words. In some cases, you can have an essay which comprises about 10,000 words. In fact, typically at the master's level, students are required to write an essay on a particular topic and have a word count of as much as 10,000 words. In a sense, for students who are doing a doctorate, when they do a PhD, and they write a thesis, the thesis can comprise about 75,000 words to even 100,000 words. In a sense, even that thesis is an essay because it is formal, it is an extended piece of writing, and it presents and supports a thesis or a proposition or central idea. You will observe as well that at its core, an essay is really about making a presentation or supporting a thesis, a proposition, or central idea. So what exactly is a thesis? A thesis is in fact synonymous with the idea of a central idea. So there has to be a core idea, a topic, a very specific topic that you want to write about. And we're going to discuss that more in a short while. So in other words, you're writing about something. And when you write about something, you're trying to advance an idea. So for example, let's talk about Facebook, because Facebook as a concept is something that everyone is familiar with. If you were to write a piece on Facebook or an essay on Facebook, what exactly is your thesis? What is your proposition? What exactly is your central idea? In other words, what about Facebook are you trying to write about? Are you, for example, trying to write that Facebook violates privacy? Are you trying to talk about Facebook being a dominant media that controls and manipulates information? Are you trying to talk about Facebook as a way for people to connect? Are you trying to talk about Facebook as a global behemoth with a lot of financial clout in the market? So you will notice that Facebook by itself is just a concept, it's just an idea. But if you were to write an essay, for example, about Facebook, there has to be an idea about Facebook, a thesis or a proposition that you're trying to advance or present. If you were to talk about mediation, for example, or let's say you're talking about, you talk about negotiation as a topic, these are again very, very broad topics. So what exactly about, if you were to write about negotiation, what about negotiation would you write about? What is your thesis? What is your proposition? What is your central idea about negotiations? your thesis might be that, negotiation is a process that people engage with every day in order to get what they want. So that might be your idea. And that's probably your thesis. So you could write an essay about that. You can also say that, negotiation requires, is a form of dispute resolution that requires special skills. Then in that case, that is the thesis you're trying to advance. So when we look at what an essay is, coming from the word Latin exagium, it is about the presentation of a case. So you have a thesis, you have a case you're trying to present. So at its core, it's about making or advancing a case, a proposition, or a thesis for the validity of a particular point of view, an analysis, or an interpretation. And so we're going to examine that further in a short while. But at its core, an essay is really about advancing a central idea. It could be about, an essay about gun laws, and you're probably saying that guns should be banned. So that is an essay topic. You're trying to advance the idea that the use of that guns should be banned, or that gun ownership shouldn't be allowed at all. It could be it could be a thesis that COVID vaccination against COVID-19 is risky, or it could be an idea that vaccination, the COVID-19 vaccination is crucial in order for the new normal to to happen, and so on. So that is what that essay is about. It is about having a thesis, a central idea, or a proposition you're trying to make, and then you're trying to advance it. You're trying to present it, you're trying to advance it, and then you're trying to support it. Okay? So it's about a central idea there. Now, what are the advantages of writing an essay? An essay, as opposed to other forms of assessment, such as quizzes or examinations, for example, some of the advantages of an essay would be that it allows students to engage deeply and more extensively with a chosen topic. If it were to be an examination, it probably will focus on 2 or 3 concepts, but it would be concepts that the student is unable to choose. But the advantage of an essay is that generally, a student is given a lot of leeway to choose a particular topic. So, it will be a topic that would be of interest to a student, that would probably engage a student. So it's not a topic that is forced upon a student, it's a topic that is relevant to a student, something that is meaningful to that student, and something therefore that a student would really want to write about, because that student probably is trying to advance an idea, trying to present an idea, or making an argument, trying to, for example, inform people about a topic, or trying to convince them about a particular topic. It also allows students, an essay also allows students more freedom to choose, organize, and present his or her ideas. So in writing an essay, no one is telling a student that an essay should be about idea 1, about idea 2, or idea 3, or that it should be focusing on a specific subtopic. Writing an essay really provides a student an opportunity to choose whatever ideas he or she would like to advance in support of that central idea or the thesis. So you can choose whatever arguments you wish to advance. You can choose the way you organize it and the way you present it. It of course allows students more flexibility to choose a topic, because in general, in a lot of subjects or units, students are given the freedom to choose a particular topic and then write about that topic. An essay would also allow students to show initiative, originality of thought, and imagination in developing a topic, mainly because no one tells the student that these are the ideas that you should be writing in an essay, or that should be in an essay. It's really up to the student to determine what will be the contents of an essay. It will be up to the student to determine the kind of arguments he or she will be advancing in support of the thesis or central idea or proposition that he or she is trying to advance. More importantly, an essay, in fact, prepares students for higher levels of education, which require research essays and theses. So when you look usually at the master's level, and especially at the level of the PhD, these particular levels of education would require students to write extensively on a topic. So it's not common, when you do a master's or a PhD, that you do an examination. You could be examined on your thesis, but essentially at the core of doing a master, especially a master's by research and a PhD, is really doing a formal and extended piece of writing on a particular topic. So in writing an essay, a student who probably wants to do honors or who may want to do a master's by research or probably even do a PhD would be really better off trying to learn the ropes of how to write an essay. And so we're going to talk more about what an essay is in a short while. Now, there are many types of essays. It could be argumentative, it could be descriptive, it could be analytical, exploratory, or it could be a review type of essay. So as an example, if you look at eBay, for example, an argumentative essay might be one that argues that that eBay makes so much money at the expense of the online retailers. So it's an argument that is being made there. It's advancing an argument that eBay might be exploitative. So that, again, you will notice that the central idea of the essay that I was advancing is about that idea of the central the thesis that eBay might be exploitative. There could be an argument as well that eBay, is a superior form of trading. So that's an argument that you're making compared, for example, to traditional commerce. And if that is the argument you're making, then you're going to have to support why you're making that kind of argument. It can also be descriptive. It could be a descriptive piece of, for example, of what family dispute resolution is all about. So it just describes what it is about. So it's about describing the features or the core ideas about family dispute resolution. It could be analytical. You're trying, for example, to analyze family dispute resolution, for example, from the viewpoint of its effectiveness. So you're trying to analyze, is family dispute resolution, for example, effective? Does it work? Does it lead to the resolution of disputes? You can also analyze family dispute resolution from the viewpoint of costs. So that will involve analysis. Now, oftentimes, again, when you do an essay, although it can be analytical, in a sense, you're also always advancing an argument. Behind that analysis is, in fact, an argument you're making. It all depends on whether the focus is to really make an argument or just doing an analysis of the effectiveness or the strength or disadvantages of a particular topic. It can be exploratory, you're just trying to explore what it is about, or it could be a review. So you could be reviewing the many types of dispute resolution processes to find out which among them is more effective, which among them leads to more disputes, for example, being resolved, and so on. So again, you will notice that because there are many types of essays, students have the flexibility of determining what kind of essay would he or she wish to write. And again, the crucial point is that whatever the type of essay it might be, behind that essay is a thesis, a central idea, or a proposition. And I'm going to talk about them more in a short while. So let's talk first about the structure of an essay. In terms of the structure of an essay, this is in fact a very common structure. There is always an introduction. So before you write an essay and start talking about your central idea or advancing a proposition, advise the reader what it is about. So you have to provide an introduction. When you meet a person for the first time, you introduce yourself. You don't just go head on into having a conversation with the person you hardly really know. I mean, you could do that, but typically the best way to approach it would be to have an introduction. Okay, and then I'm gonna explain more about that. Now, an essay always has a body. So this is where the arguments come in. So if you have a central idea, that central idea then has to be supported by sub-arguments. And these are contained in body paragraphs. The body paragraphs can be from 3 to even 4 or even 5 body paragraphs. But you want to avoid having so many body paragraphs because essentially the body paragraphs are by themselves arguments or sub-arguments which support the central thesis. So you have a central thesis at the top, and yet because you're making an argument, you have a central thesis, you're trying to support that with other ideas. Now these other ideas, of course, on their own have a thesis. They also have ideas of their own, and these have got to be supported, as I will show in a short while. And so after you've done an introduction, you've written the body paragraph. And so, for example, in an essay involving 2,000 words, what typically happens is that 10% usually is devoted to introduction, 10% is devoted to the conclusion, and about 80% is devoted to the body paragraphs or to the body. And so once you've talked about the introduction, which I'll talk more about in a short while, and you've developed the body paragraphs, it leads you to a conclusion. So you begin with a statement, for example, that this is what I'm going to talk about, this is the argument I'm going to be making, and in support of that argument or in support of the central thesis, I will develop or formulate or advance 3 or 4 arguments in support of that main argument I'm making. So that's going to be the introduction. You develop the body, you write, those sub-arguments. It leads you to a conclusion. So you'll probably say, in this essay, I talked about blah, 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 blah. In support of that essay, I showed, I demonstrated that 1, 2, 3, 4. So in conclusion, I have established or demonstrated that, blah, 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 blah. So that's a typical structure of an essay. Now let's examine the introduction further. So the goal of an introduction is to, and I picked this up, as I said, there are a lot of materials available on the internet. I picked this up from one of the sources. The introduction moves from general to specific. This is where you open with a short orientation. So in other words, give us a sense of what the topic is all about. If you're going to be talking about Facebook, tell us, why is Facebook important? How many users are there? Is it being used worldwide? Is there an issue about the use of Facebook? If it's about this alternative dispute resolution you want to talk about, give us a sense. Who knows about alternative dispute resolution? What is it about? Why do we even have to talk about it? So you're talking about the importance and the relevance of a topic. So give us a sense of what the broad topic is about. And then tell us what your thesis is. What exactly is the main idea or the proposition or the central idea you're trying to advance? Tell us what it is. And then if you're saying that this is the kind of, this is the central idea you're advancing, explain to us how you will support that main idea or argument by sub-arguments. So you're providing a roadmap. So as I said, you'd probably say, this is what the topic is about. And based on the topic, you will, I'm going to show you, you're saying that this is important, it's relevant. And then I'm going to focus on an aspect of this particular topic and advance an argument that, alternative dispute resolution is something that will probably overtake the curial or the litigious system or the adversarial system of dispute resolution in Australia or the world. So that's the argument the argument you're making, and then you're probably going to say, in support of this central idea or thesis, I will show, one, that 80% or 85% of disputes are in fact resolved through alternative dispute resolution. 2, I will show that surveys indicate that people love alternative dispute resolution. 3, I will demonstrate that alternative dispute resolution is a topic that people talk about a lot these days because they find that it is of value. And then after I discuss this, I will then I will then advance a conclusion. So you've provided an introduction, which is about 10% of the word count of an assessment. Let's look at the body. Now remember, as I said, in the body, there are usually between 3 to 4 body paragraphs. Now, each of these body paragraphs usually contain a central idea of its own, an argument of its own. It's possible that in one of the body paragraphs may talk about the topic without advancing an idea. In other words, you could be talking in greater detail about what family dispute resolution is. You could explain more about what this mediation is as a concept. And then, but crucially, in that body, because you said you had a central idea you were trying to advance, you've got to make sure that there are body paragraphs that in fact support your central idea, whatever that might be. Now remember, an essay is not just about a topic. It has to be it has to be about a central idea you are trying to advance, whatever that might be. Okay, and so if, as I said, if it's about Facebook and you're starting to say that Facebook is a dangerous, is a tool for oppression or is a tool for misinformation, so that's an argument you're making. One of the bodies can be to talk about more about what Facebook is, you know, the extent of its popularity, who are using it, and so on. That's probably one of the body paragraphs. But then again, because your central thesis was the danger to democracy posed by Facebook, you need to support that in the different body paragraphs. So one could be that, you know, it's a tool for fake news. It could be that Facebook. Secondly, you talk about Facebook not putting in the proper tools that prevent the spread of fake news or hate speech and so on. And the third one could be that that a lot of, you know, crimes have been committed and, you know, vile actions or evil acts have been committed because of Facebook. So these are the arguments you're making, and they are in the body. So the body therefore consists of paragraphs, between 3 to 4 paragraphs. Each body paragraph has its own argument. So it could be about answering the question by developing a discussion. It should show your knowledge and grasp of the material that you've read. It offers an exposition, an elaboration, and evidence to develop your argument. And it should use relevant examples and authoritative quotes if need be. But essentially, it should be paraphrasing. In other words, if you're trying to use an idea from an authoritative source you're using, could be an academic journal or it could be a textbook, instead of, you know, relying on quotes and quoting sources verbatim or word for word, you should try to use your own words. And that's what's called paraphrasing. Okay, so when you have an idea, instead of quoting them, you use your own words. You're essentially paraphrasing the ideas of another person. Now, if your question has more than one part, structure the body into sections that deal with each part of the question. So, okay, so we talked about the body. So in conclusion, your goal now is to move from specific to general. So remember, when you do the introduction, you began with a very general topic and you said, I'm going to talk about specifics. So these are the specifics. In the conclusion, you're moving from specific to general because your goal is to try to draw attention to the fact that this is a very important argument you're making. And so it will essentially restate your answer to the question or re-summarize the main points. And it could include a final broad statement about possible implications, future directions for research, making qualifications about the conclusion, etc. Now, what you should avoid when you write the conclusion is that you shouldn't be introducing new information or ideas in the conclusion. If it's not in the body, it shouldn't be in the conclusion because you're essentially making a conclusion, unless it's about an implication. So potentially, if it's, you know, if it's an implication, it may not be in the body. You're then trying to create, you know, if you had an argument in your body, and you're saying, as an, you know, one of the implications of this argument is that this is what's happening. But even then, you will notice it is not a new information or idea because it is very much related to what has been discussed in the body. Okay, now let's talk further about essay paragraphs, especially the body paragraphs. So a paragraph, remember, is a related group of sentences that develops one main idea. So you cannot have a sentence and say that that is a paragraph. A paragraph would usually consist of about 3 to 4 to 5 sentences. And if you have a body paragraph and it contains one main idea, you will notice that all the sentences in that particular paragraph are coherent, they're integrated, they're related. they're all about one single main idea that is being advanced in that paragraph. So if in a paragraph, therefore, you're talking about a lot of things, then that's a very incoherent paragraph. That's not the way it's written. So a body paragraph talks just about one main idea so that all the sentences in that body paragraph are related to each other. So each paragraph in the body of the essay should contain a topic sentence that states the main or controlling idea. It will then provide supporting sentences to explain and develop the point you're making. You need to provide evidence, and the evidence is based on your reading or an example from the subject area that supports your point. You can provide an analysis of the implications, significance, or impact of the evidence, and then you should provide preferably a concluding statement that restates your point, analyzes the evidence, or acts as a transition to the next paragraph. So you will notice that, again, as we said in the intro, your essay is about a central idea, right? As I stated from the very beginning. But that central idea that you have has got to be supported, because you're advancing a proposition or a central idea or an argument. It has to be supported by sub-ideas or sub-arguments. And these sub-arguments are contained in the body paragraphs. And each body paragraph, as I said, also contains its own main idea. So main idea 1, main idea 2, main idea 3, main idea 4, that all support the main or central idea that we're advancing. And when you write, as I said, each of these body paragraphs that contains one idea, every single body paragraph, one idea, but all the sentences there are integrated, related to each other. They're meant to support the main idea that you are trying to advance. Okay, so having discussed that, let's talk about research and essays now. It is important that when you write essays, they must be based on research. Okay, so your goal here, if you're going to be advancing an argument, if you're going to be making the case for a central idea or a thesis, you need to be sure that when you advance those arguments or central idea, they must be supported by research. Now, in general, in university assessments pertaining to essays, you should be using academic journals and textbooks in support of your essays. In the context of law, you might use legislation and statutes or even case law. But in general, if it's a broad topic that you're writing about, use academic journals and academic textbooks. Now, do not use internet sites as academic sources of references. So you shouldn't be using Wikipedia, because Wikipedia is not authoritative. In general, therefore, the advantage of using academic journals and textbooks is that they are written by experts. And not only are they written by experts, they usually go through what is known as a peer review process. So usually, and not always, but in general, if you talk about manuscripts published in academic journals, before that particular manuscript or journal article ever gets published, it is reviewed by peers, by experts as well, before it gets accepted. Even before it gets accepted, it goes through a lot of revisions to find out what are the weaknesses in that particular manuscript or journal article. So it becomes a very robust manuscript by the time it gets published. It's authoritative, and in a sense, it's reliable, at least more reliable than using blogs written by just anyone. So the point, for example, being that if you wanna write about the dangers of COVID-19, you're not going to be citing a blog written by just anyone who is probably a beautician or a massage artist or a martial artist. You want to be quoting, in fact, disease infection experts. If you want to talk about COVID-19, you're not even going to be relying on an ordinary GP who hasn't done research about COVID-19. It should be somebody who has done research or has done extensive reading about the topic. If you want to read about alternative dispute resolution, you will be citing academic journals written by experts, academics, practitioners who are very familiar with and knowledgeable about the topic. In the same way, again, when you talk about textbooks are usually authoritative because before they can be published before publishers or publishing companies are willing to publish a textbook, then they have to be convinced that the author of the textbook is an authority on the subject. And so again, that's the problem with relying on blogs, with any type of just, any website that you use as a source, you have to ask, is the person writing this blog, or is the person who is the author of this particular website or site, is he an authority, or is she an authority? Is she an expert? So in the same way, if you were going to undergo, for example, a heart transplant, you're not going to get a plumber, to do the heart transplant for you, or you're not even going to use a lawyer, right? Or if you have a dispute that lands in court, you're going to get a lawyer, and you're not going to use a farmer or a baker to assist you with the legal proceeding. You need an expert. Okay, so avoid, therefore, using just any internet site as an academic source. Preferably, you should be citing academic journals and textbooks. For most essays, the minimum requirement might be between 5 or 6 references. The point of the references, one would be that it shows and demonstrates that you've read up on the topic. I use the word at least. I use the phrase at least. You could be citing even 10, sources. The more, the better, because it shows that you've read extensively. If you've only cited one paper or one academic journal or one manuscript, it shows that you haven't done much research. And if you haven't done much research, if you haven't done much reading, we begin to wonder, how much do you really know about the topic? Because if you know very little about the topic, you shouldn't be writing about it. You probably have nothing to say. Now, sure, you have an argument, a personal argument you're trying to advance. There's a point you're trying to advance, that's fine. But back up and support whatever argument you're making. Now, let's talk about plagiarism. The other problem about essays that are not supported by academic, by references based on academic journals or textbooks, is that when a student writes a statement or advances an idea, and there is no reference for it, the student is essentially making, this is my own idea. Now, we could have a problem with that, because we ask, how do you know about the topic? Are you an authority of the topic? Why should we trust what you say? But if you cite an authoritative source, you're essentially saying, no, this is not my idea. This is what Professor so-and-so said, or this is what Dr. so-and-so said. So in other words, when you make a statement and you have a reference, you are supporting that reference by on the basis of what an authority or an expert said about this topic, and it's not about you. The other problem about failing to provide a reference is that if you're claiming, because you don't have a reference, you're claiming it is your own idea. But what if it is not your own idea? What if you actually copied it off somebody? Then in other words, because you actually copied it off somebody and you're claiming it is yours, you have just committed plagiarism. So plagiarism consists mainly in claiming that an idea is yours when in fact it belongs to somebody else. And that constitutes academic dishonesty. Plagiarism can also happen in the sense that you quote verbatim a phrase or a sentence without putting in the quotation marks. So without the quotation marks, you're essentially saying that these are my own words, although I reference somebody else. Or you could use footnotes, for example. But because you did not use quotation marks, essentially you're saying that these are your own words. But if they are not, and if they are in fact verbatim words by another author, you've just committed plagiarism. Now, the crucial point as well is that if an essay comprises mainly of quotes, meaning what the student has done, and I've seen this happen many times, if what the student has done is to just plug in quotes after quotes in a body paragraph in order to write an essay, and I've seen this happen, you begin to wonder, what is the original contribution of the student? If a lot of the body paragraphs are mainly quotations from experts, the student therefore has no original contribution. You might as well get a year 2 student or a year 3 student, copy and paste a quote and put it in an essay. But for a student to say that these are my ideas, the student must at least attempt to paraphrase, to use his own words in expressing or in trying to summarize the ideas of an expert. Okay, so having said that, you will notice that based on this podcast, I have talked about the advantages of an essay, what an essay is about, the structure of an essay, how to write an essay, as well as research and essays. And I hope you found this particular podcast helpful. Thanks for listening. Bye.